Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are creating the ultimate beginner's guide to city skylines by creating the city of Tutoria. And today's episode is the final in our demonstration of all of the different DLC in the game. And we're going to do something a little bit different. So today we're going to be unleashing hellfire on this city. And because of that, I'm not as concerned about meeting our population threshold. I could spend the first 30 minutes of this trying to get our 5,000 population or 3,500. But ultimately, it's just not going to matter because we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff to the city. So what I do want to focus on is making sure that we have all of our disaster response that we're going to need for this city. And I want to do a little bit of traffic fixing so that as we go through and our city empties out and then fills back in, we're in a good spot for that recovery. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to look at these two interchanges right here. I think these are very important and we're going to want to fix them up. We can see we have a lot of backup right here. The way that we're going to resolve that is just to sever this. Now I'm going to mirror this other side over here. A very simple ramp, nothing all that spectacular. We'll start out by grading. So we'll come over here, turn this to high, set this to medium, right mouse click up here, find out where we're sloping and slope right up. So that's right mouse click at the top, left mouse click and drag at the bottom. Perfect. Now we'll grab our dirt road. A lot easier to use a dirt road. Now I'm not as close to I'm not in love with where the ramp is starting. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's add a node. So we'll add that there. And then I'll just upgrade with any other type. Just want to see if I can get this to not be a bridge segment. And it didn't work. So what we're gonna do is come over here. We'll just raise up in this area. And now you'll see that it's just a regular segment. Now that node's not perfect. So we're gonna try again. This is a great example of letting perfect be the enemy of good. I think we're just gonna go with it as is. It'll be a little, the symmetry won't be great there, but it'll be just fine. There we go. So that is significantly better. Let's clean it up just a little bit. We'll feather it out at the bottom. Okay, and there are certainly things we could do to improve this, but that's pretty good. Over here, I think we have an opportunity, and I could do a lot to improve this, but I think that what we're gonna do is basically the bare minimum. Let's just sever that, and then we're gonna slope into this intersection right here. So we'll use our slope terrain tool. Actually, before we do that, let's pull this out a little ways. The reason why is we're gonna need to set our the bottom height and the top height. So I'll right mouse click at the top, and then I can find this sloped area, or the bottom area, and slope up to this. Perfect. Now I'm gonna go in here and we'll turn on our terrain heights and follow that path that we just created. And look at how much it loves that. Okay, and we got a weird bumpy section up here. We're gonna fix that, but we'll get this started first. And we see the upside down, so that's not good. So let's go ahead and get that. We'll add a node if we can. What I'm trying to do here is just lower this just a little bit, because if I can get that to be lower, it'll be a bridge segment again. And you have to switch road types. That's why you see me doing a whole bunch of weird random road stuff. But once you get it, now you'll see the upside down is gone. That bridge is not very tall. So if we were very concerned about this, that's probably what I would do, is look at that bridge type and try to get that fixed, or a bit lower this rather. But that's not our focus. We just want to get this thing working. I will slope this though, because otherwise we're going to have a weird mixture of bridges. Not really feeling that right now. All right, so now we'll just use our freeform tool to make a nice connection. There we go. Pretty much the minimum I could do to make this work. And if I wanted this to look real nice, I could probably turn this right here into a bridge as well. Considering that won't take a ton of effort, we're gonna go for it. And this is why you don't talk about things, because it does take a ton of effort sometimes. What you end up doing is tricking yourself into believing it's gonna be easy, even though it's not. There you go. That's much better. All right, so this should carry quite a bit of traffic, which is going to be really important as we go through and attempt to evacuate our city. So let's go ahead. I just want to see what this is carrying. Look at that. When you see that after you build a road, you can tell that it was missing. So this was we were sending traffic up and down and not actually across where it wanted to go. So always important to find those places you're funneling traffic without this. So I wouldn't call this a beautiful interchange, but I would call it functional. So I'm going to be happy with it. Now let's go through and do a bit of vanilla traffic fixing. This signal is totally unwarranted. So I'm going to add stops to here. So we're prioritizing that through movement. And if we take a look, here's one of the rationales for that. I can't tell in a definitive way, but it, to me, appears that most of the traffic is going up across the bridge, not down onto the highway. So you could certainly decide to signalize it if things start to back up, but that would be my starting point, is let's prioritize the movement along that collector. Now I'm going to go along this collector. I could certainly set the priority, and now I just have to click and it'll add stop signs to every single road that I click this on. It's setting the priority for this collector. You gotta be careful with this though. If you have roundabouts, it'll mess everything up. Now the other thing we're seeing is some backup here. And to me, that's telling me a couple of things. Number one, our ramp here is insufficient. We might even be down on lanes. We might need an extra lane here. We'll start out with the bare minimum, which is just let's upgrade this ramp. And at the bottom, we might even upgrade it further. The reason why we're doing this is now we have a dedicated turn lane. And to me, that's pretty important here, because you can see that there's desire to go both ways. And this bears itself out. If we click here, interesting. We have people turning around on this. Now that I did not expect to see. And we see it less now. So there's a heavy right movement and then a slight left, but that right movement's very heavy. The other thing that we can do, because you still see they're all lining up in one lane, there's no reason not to make this an arterial. The highway's an arterial. This road is really functioning as an arterial. It is an arterial, so let's get that upgraded. And now hopefully we get more dual right-hand turns coming here. There we go. Very, very, very good. So we've already got that over here. They're still lining up in that one lane. That's frustrating. There are people actually turning left from this right-hand lane. So I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. We'll just upgrade that a bit. Hopefully they'll spread out in their lanes. It's not happening here. And this is just one of those things with vanilla that can be very challenging. We are seeing it here now though. And of course we're going to decide that this is the best spot to switch lanes. So the other solution that could work really well here would be to have kind of a British style roundabout down here. I think that would really do the trick. Why don't we go ahead and give that a shot? Now, I've got what will be my bridge structure, the roundabout, and I would love to keep the cross through here because that would ensure that I don't have any wonkiness when I add my ramps. However, I just don't see that as in my future. Unfortunately, you can already see that I'm having some problems getting this upgraded, and that to me means that I didn't go quite far enough with my ramps here, unfortunately. So I'm going to upgrade the roundabout right off the bat, which should help me. We'll make sure that it's going in the right direction. And now I'd love to lower this. It's not going to let me. I'm going to get it as close as I can and then make my connection. The nice thing is the second leg, as long as you have road guidelines on, should be easy enough to connect. This one is not. So I just turned off road guidelines and I was able to eyeball it pretty close into place. So looking good there. We'll get this reversed. And now let's get our ramps back on there. I don't know that this roundabout is 100% perfect, but it's going to be perfectly fine for what we're trying to do. Now I did set priority on this road, so we're going to want to take a look at that and then give one last once over to our roundabout, it's actually not going in the right direction. So when I said British style, I meant we will also have the wrong directionality for our road type, apparently. There we go. If we wanted to go through, we could, come through and do some lane mathematics through here. And now with this in mind, we actually would want this to stay a collector, so we don't have too many lanes here. So this should work really well. I do want to just come through here, look at our junctions, looking good. And I'm going to speed this up and see how this functions. And this distance here is really tricky. It's not that long. I might just go ahead and upgrade this again. And we might need to think about making this roundabout bigger. Now, the unfortunate thing is in vanilla, you can't get this to work really well. They are all favoring one lane. I can't force them to not do this merge here, because if they would stay in the center lane, they could make the exact same movement, but that's not what they're deciding to do. So it's unfortunate because I think there's plenty of capacity here. This is just the game engine not working the way it should. So we can try to get around that by upgrading. Ultimately, at some point, you've got to kind of accept that the game is imperfect in this particular way when you're playing vanilla. And the real solution is the real vanilla solution is probably rebuilding a whole bunch of stuff. But this is a little bit better, I think, than it was before. It's not great, though. I will readily admit that. It's not wonderful. That said, for what our purposes are today, it's going to work just fine. So we've made the couple of traffic fixes with the interchanges. Now I want to go through and look at junctions and make sure that we don't have stoplights that we don't need. And by that, I mean, if you were driving down this street, you'd stop every couple of seconds, basically, because of all the local roads coming in. So I'm prioritizing any of the collectors. Unless we're meeting up with a local road, it's the end of the collector, then I'm favoring the local road. So that should do the trick. And over here, where things are actually pretty clear, I'll set that priority there as well. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. Our population has gone up a little bit, and I'm pleased with that as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pop over here into the fire safety menu and disaster services. In our previous episode, we placed a few things. We did get one disaster response building. I think we need two. And I want to place some shelters. So we're going to place a disaster response building over here. Kind of sneak that in. So this will serve both sides of the community. Is this the best location for it? Maybe not. But we just want to exist. And I'm afraid that we're not going to exist if we don't have two of these. For redundancy, I'm adding this. Now for shelters, we added approximately 21,000 worth of shelters, and we've got a population of 107,000, 108,000. So we know that with 10,000 for the large shelters, we're going to need at least 9 more of these. So what I want to do is sprinkle these throughout the community. And I have bus routes to try to extend the reach of this. Rather than doing that, I do want to just make sure we have enough shelters. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to try to find residential areas that put these in. The rationale there being is that you can get to it quickly from a residential area. So lots of eminent domain to make this happen. And where I see that we have some empty zoning, which is where we move things over time, I will go through and zone things again as well. So that's 1, 2. We need 1 or 2 in the downtown area. And I might just sneak this one on campus. That was not a great location from a height standpoint, but we are going to figure it out. Then we'll add 1 down here as well. I wonder, if we had a road there, could we? Yeah, it's not wide enough. This is again another challenging location, but we don't have to take any buildings down. So I think we're going to deal with a bit of wonkiness here. 5. We've only got 1 over here, so we're going to add 1 over here as well. 6. We need 1 to serve this area. Let's just extend this road out a bit. Oh, doesn't like it. Doesn't like it at all. 7. Now this, again, is another challenging location. That didn't work. Let's give that another shot. It is dipping down into the ground, so sometimes you just got to accept that maybe you need to look at your terrains. And yeah, that's not a suitable location going uphill. We could have gone off the side, so that's how we'll handle that. And we can certainly make that work. That is much better. So 2 more, and we should have enough. Oh, interestingly, we don't have water over here. That's something that we've got to keep an eye on. These buildings take water, power, and commercial goods. So they need to have good access to everything. So you're going to see trucks coming in here and drop off food, and then they'll take water and store it. So that is why they take water. And I'm going to get one over here and one more on this side of town. And then I think we're probably pretty good. There we go. So now we have enough shelters for our city to evacuate. So that should be pretty good. Let's take a look at everything else. So our radio coverage, we take a look. It's good over here. It's good over here. It's not so good in this part of town. So in our agriculture area, let's add a large mast. Now don't forget, it looks like it's covered. It is not. We don't have power. Power is right in the center. So we're going to need to run a power line. There we go. I don't think it needs water. Yeah, it's fine without water. That part's fine. And I do notice that our sewage is not great. So I'm going to come in here. We'll just raise this up a little bit. There we go. And now back to this. Our coverage is probably good enough everywhere else. Earthquake coverage, pretty good. We've got our buoys out there, so we should be fine. So all of our coverage from that perspective is good. Now I want to take a look at our helicopter coverage. So let's pop into here, and you can see that we've got a number of areas that do not have great coverage. We have one helicopter depot over here. I'm going to add one on this side of town and one by the airport. Truthfully, I think that we have an opportunity to add a few of them by the airport, not just this. Let's take a look at this nice high plateau up here. So I'm going to look to add a bunch of coverage. Now look at this. Got some backup occurring. Oh, that might be why. We've got our Clearwater vehicles in here. So I am actually going to take a quick beat and get those removed, because that will cause problems for us. Our network has not been designed around long trains, and I don't want that to take our whole build down. Okay, and we're back. Interestingly, I went in and I took a look, and it appears that these assets are disabled. That said, they're still showing up. I did go ahead and remove the Clearwater County long trains. So we still have some of these short ones. Even though the assets are disabled, they're still showing up. But the shorter ones shouldn't have an impact on the way our network works. You can see that these are just traditional standard length, and they just look cool. So we'll go with that. So let's get back to it. So we've got our fire department depot, and you see that everything's kind of working a bit better now. Let's go ahead and add our other helicopter depots as well. So we have a medical helicopter depot, and we'll take a police helicopter depot over here as well. And you can tell at one point I inadvertently snuck these into the build, and I had to remove them, but the water pipes are still there. So we're looking good. We do need power over here though. So let's work on that. We've got everything on. All I really care about is grid. So we'll just run this along here. Now, one thing to know is as soon as I turn on disasters, if we have a thunderstorm, these could be struck. So certainly a concern to overdo it with your power lines. There we go. So that'll help out quite a bit. I do want to have a fire helicopter over here though. And that's because I know that the fires are going to be probably our number one concern. I'm just adding some space so that we have the ability to add roads through here if we want, or, just give it some breathing room either way. So I'm putting this on the collector. That's very abnormal for me, but the reason why I don't care is there just aren't many vehicles coming out of here, so it should be just fine. Now, with the fire helicopter depot, you do need watchtowers. They don't work on their own. So we could just add this in here into the park, and then we'll watch what that does. Apparently not a lot in that location. We'll do the exact same thing over here. Everyone loves it, but it's not dropping the hazard, which to me is unusual. Well, we might need to also beef up our fire protection. So I think we're going to just need to add more fire departments. So this will impact the trees. So I was surprised it didn't impact this. Not at all surprised that it doesn't change the building. So this should, you see all those trees, they went from red to blue. That's a good thing. Now this doesn't really care about heights, which is kind of weird. Oh, maybe it does. I didn't think that it did. Well, let's put that up there and see what it does. Yeah, it does care about heights. So over here, for instance, it's on the other side of this cliff. So if we were to add that here, now the coverage is better. I can get rid of this one. This one too. So worry about your heights. It's very clear to worry about your heights. And then we'll add one over here in the forestry district as well. Probably the most important one. So why don't we take a look at this? This is about our high point. There's really not a high point here. So there we go. So for most of our trees, I think we're good now. But our fire protection and our hazard in general is pretty high. So I'm going to add some major fire facilities throughout the city. And I'm going to try to place these off major roads, but not on them directly. The main reason for that is these will load lots of vehicles. And I see that this is finished emptying. I'm going to re-enable that. We're going to need death care. And that's the other thing we're going to need to worry about a little bit. So we're using lots of eminent domain today to fix things up. But I think it's pretty necessary. Our fire coverage really isn't very good, which it's my build, so it's not unusual. I would say if you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you would expect my city to have all sorts of fire problems. And I think that's because it just you need so many stinking firehouses in this game. It's kind of crazy. If you have disasters anyway. So this one is probably the iffiest one that I've placed. This is not a collector arterial by the size of the road, but it's functioning as one. It really provides a great deal of service to this harbor. So maybe a questionable choice there, but we're going to go with it. Downtown, we're going to need to take out a skyscraper to make this happen. So I'll try to do it in the place where maybe it's the least obstructive. Look at that. That covers the entirety of downtown. So that was a pretty good location for one. On campus, we could use one as well. And then near the zoo. So interestingly, you don't see a huge budget impact. And one of the reasons for that is the buildings are leveling up as I'm placing these. So never be afraid. If you have the money to add these sorts of facilities, absolutely go ahead and do it if you need them. Because it will balance out over time with your revenues that you're taking in. Probably shouldn't add that in the park, but we'll go for it anyway. And then maybe just a couple more over here. There we go. I don't see all that many places where coverage isn't awesome right now. So I think that to me, that means that we should be pretty safe. Maybe in this industrial area, we could use one more. Sneak one back here. And again, this is really close to another one. It's just kind of one of those silly things. You got to have a lot of them. And even with that, we're not perfect. It's just like, it's fine, but it's not perfect. So, all right. So we're good there. I think it's time. I think it is time. So what we're going to do, very first thing I'm going to do is save it. And now with that saved, I think it's time to get moving. So that we're going to pop into here. We're going to go into our options and into gameplay. So I'm going to turn on random disasters, and that immediately removes our ability to disable fire spreading. This frequency will tell you how often and how severe disasters, well, actually just how often they'll occur. Severity is not something you can adjust here. However, if you want to unleash disasters yourself, you can absolutely do that. So go into your landscaping and disasters menu, and then you can click on disasters, and there are a number of disasters available to you. Right here is the severity slider. So, for instance, I could decide I want to unlock some of the unique buildings that require disasters, and some of them require you to basically have a disaster that isn't all that severe, that you have no deaths from. I'm trying to remember exactly which one that is. The Pyramid of Safety. So to get this, you have to have a disaster hit your city without any casualties. So if you were to do that, you might want to set the severity to 1, and then you need to strike a building. You can't just, go off here and say, over here we'll do it. So we've got this. We could just say, all right, we want a severity of 1 right there. Some of the disasters happen immediately. So you can see that the earthquake was pretty immediate. That was a 1. It will be centered in this general area, and we can speed it up and see this happen. This is a good time to mention, you might see Unified UI down here. This is because I've added a camera mod, which helps with everything. It's a really nice mod. It cleans things up in terms of the cameras. I could disable going to disasters. I did not do that. So it should pull me right at the disaster like the vanilla functionality. And obviously this is going to take a few minutes. What doesn't is forest fire. So I could just click on this, immediately starts a fire. There's a cooldown timer for some of these. There's our earthquake.
An earthquake is occurring. Don't panic and wait for help if you are in the affected area.
Now apparently that was a severity 1 earthquake. I'm actually pretty surprised. That left a pretty deep rut. And you can see that it's destroyed a number of buildings. So the reason why we wanted the disaster response unit is if I were to just go ahead, delete this, and rebuild it, people would die in here. Same thing with this home. If I wait and I have my disaster response unit, they're going to send a unit out, and you can see one right there. And you can see exactly what they're going to do. So let's follow the disaster response unit. And so they are going to go look at collapsed buildings and attempt to find survivors. And then if it is a zone building, you can leave it, eventually it'll rebuild. If it is a plopped building, it will then give you the option to rebuild it. So you can see they're coming down. We've got a building right here that needs to be searched. When we click on it, you can see it's collapsed. It's got this little collapsed building icon. They're gonna come out, search the building with their dogs, and then you'll get this little blue icon, and it immediately rebuilt. That's because we have strong demand. If we didn't have that demand, we could demolish it, and that would improve things. Now over here, we're gonna need to wait. We've got a fire going. Things are happening now. So I'm gonna speed this up so that we get our disaster response unit over here. The other thing I want to point out is if you come here into your city statistics, you can take a look at the number of collapsed buildings that you have. And it looks like we had 2 destroyed road segments. It doesn't update right away. So something to keep in mind. So we can come over here into our menu and look at destruction, and that will make the buildings and roads that are destroyed glow. So that can be really helpful when you're trying to figure out where your road segments are that are destroyed. So I'm going to come through here, and we've got to rebuild this highway segment. And then for these other segments, you can just upgrade, and that will repair the segment. And it shows you the repair cost, $725. This one's $300. My guess, and I'm not 100% sure of this, it's half the price of actually rebuilding it. So it's in your best interest not to demolish it. There we go. That is fixed. And now we've got these couple of parks over here. We've got 1 disaster response unit over here, and that will impact the land value. No one wants to live next to a disaster zone. Now that that's fixed, you saw people walk out of there. We rebuild it. The values go up again. So we're good. Hopefully they come over here and fix this soon. There we go. So I think that is, in terms of disasters from this particular, collapsed buildings from this particular disaster, we are completely resolved. We can then open up our disaster reports. They'll tell us about it, and you can see what happens. So we had citizens 325 lost, 35 buildings destroyed, quite a bit. Almost a little over 900 meters of road destroyed, and this is for the earthquake, forest fire combined, number of trees set on fire, and the number of buildings. So there might be more that I didn't realize was destroyed. So I'm just going to zoom around quickly. I don't see anything else. They must have been zone buildings. So we do have this scar as the aftermath of this building, or of this disaster. So obviously that was one way that we could have done it. If we wanted to set our evacuation, which we probably should have done, we could have clicked on this and that would evacuate everyone into this shelter. Click it again and it releases everybody. So the earthquake will leave this scar. You'll have those sorts of buildings that can go down. We can do the same thing. Let's crank this one up. We'll do a level 5 tornado. And let's again, just say in this general area.
Meteorologists have issued a severe
So we have a tornado warning.
Residents should seek shelter immediately.
So let's go ahead. We've set this. Now everyone's going into the shelters. And I'm curious, what does this do for traffic? Look at our traffic flow as everyone's trying to evacuate. And speed this up. And to me, this really highlights some shortcomings in our transportation network. And I think that there's a pretty good case to be made that maybe this highway needs to be widened. Look at all those people walking too. I don't know if they're walking to the shelters. Holy cow, lots of people walking. And the interesting thing is this is the area where it's going to hit. We know that. They don't know that, but we know that. So, not a good thing. We could also go through and why don't we have a sinkhole open up? Oh, it's raining. That's how you know we're about to have the tornado, is it's raining. And tornadoes will often happen with thunderstorms, and look at where it actually formed. So we said right here, but it formed a little bit before then, and it's just ripping through our town. It's gonna go right across the highway. Ooh, look at that damage. Look at that damage. Now, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna unleash every single disaster on the city right now, and then I'm gonna take, we'll say 15 minutes to try to repair things. So, obviously this one happens fairly soon after you unleash it. Let's do a sinkhole as well. Do that on this park. Then we will also have a thunderstorm. Let's just strike this. We'll have a forest fire over here, and that will still happen in the rain. We can have a building collapse. Now this, some people like this because you could go and zero out, say, a cemetery and collapse the cemetery, which will make it so that you can rebuild it if it's full. So kind of an interesting strategy there if you wanted to. Because now I could go ahead and just delete this. Whoa, forest fire. Now I can have a regular fire, so that's like a building fire. Let's just start our main university building on fire. A tsunami. Let's have that strike right here. And then a meteor strike. Let's hit the airport. And that's all the disasters all at once. So everyone's evacuated and you'll just see these start to stack. Incoming tornado, incoming sinkhole, thunderstorm. I don't know how they know a sinkhole's forming. That's not the kind of thing that you can see forming. But look at this thing. You see the path that it's following. And it took out the park again. And here, it didn't destroy the road in terms of just like ripping it up like the earthquake did, but it did destroy the road. There's debris on it, and now people can't get through. So I'm just gonna go through here, and we'll repair it. And it also destroyed all the power lines here. And you can't repair those. To fix that, you've got to just honestly go through and just rebuild. It also took out some train tracks here. So lots of little things to fix when you have a disaster like this. And you can do it in the middle of the disaster if you want. You don't have to. I'm going to do some, just to keep the city moving. And you don't even have to have the right road type on. It's a little more dangerous though, because if I click this twice, rather than repairing, it'll upgrade the road. But if you're careful, you can do it. I'm not that careful. So let's just go ahead and get these fixed. Oh, here we go. There's our sinkhole. And that park is gone. You can't fix that. Oh, and what is this? What is this? Lightning. Okay. So the lightning, I set it to strike over here. You can't really control lightning like that though. So let's see what, so lightning will strike these most likely. So you're going to see some of these. We just fixed this. It's destroyed again. That's the big thing to worry about with lightning, is that it will take out your power lines. There is a way to mitigate that in your policy menu. We could have had the lightning rod policy. Gone. So the meteor took out our airport. That is no longer going to be functioning. So the lightning rod policy, we actually do have it on. So even with that. Now this, again, not something that we can just repair. So our airport will stop functioning. That's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. Now even with this, if I wanted to just go through here, and let's say I see this and I go, oh my goodness, we got to get this thing fixed right away. It's not going to be that simple. And this is why. It placed it inside of here. So we're going to need to get rid of that. And we're going to have to level the ground from here. So just something to be aware of. Probably not too surprising considering that the Airports DLC does all this leveling for you normally. but there it is. So we've leveled that out. Let's fix our airport while we're waiting for the rest of the city to go up in flames. It's also helpful to use the correct airport. So the other thing about this is it's not going to just neatly fit back in place. And this did destroy some underground stuff as well. So things to be aware of. So we're going to actually need to go through and back this off a bit. We probably could have kept this. So I'm going to add this back in, and then we'll see if we can connect up. Yeah, it doesn't love it. And you can see just how tricky this can be, because if it doesn't line up perfectly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you want to destroy your city, maybe your airport's not the best thing to destroy. We'll just get this thing running again. At a certain point, that's really what I care about. And we could certainly go through and try to finagle everything else later if we wanted to. Okay, not perfect, but this should start working again. Now, I do want to see, what does our report look like? Citizens lost 349. Buildings destroyed 169. Wow, that's a lot of roads. A lot of buildings on fire, a lot of trees on fire. Now, everyone's still in the shelter, which is why you see our city losing income so quickly. We need to let people out of the shelter. Now, as soon as we do that, we'll see our budget start to improve. We also need to take a look here at our subway. No longer connected. We've got water pipes that are gone. So lots of little work to do in this area. Okay, so our airport's working again. Let's see what else we can get working. And we've got a fire. Oh, jeez. So lots of stuff to fix. So we could come in here and take a look at our collapsed buildings. So this will probably be the best way if you want to go through and fix this using the same tool, just to know exactly which roads are demolished. And I can just go through here, look for the red segments, right mouse click to repair those using any road tool and not make the mistake of inadvertently upgrading. So this entire area is fixed. That's where we had our tornado. Got a few segments over here to fix. Oh, and our university's just in shambles, just in tatters. And we've got a road here that's also broken. That should get our airport working well. I think that's all of our road segments. Now it's buildings that have some work. So the interesting thing is we had a tsunami and I missed it. I don't know that it actually... The tsunami is one of the slower ones. Did it actually happen? It did not. So we missed our tsunami. Tsunamis are bluntly probably the most devastating things that can happen to your city. They have a huge cooldown period and they take a long time to occur. So we are going to just turn that on and try to fix some of the rest of this. You can see we got one building. This whole place burned down. The funny thing is I set the disaster to unleash on this building. It's like the one building that didn't burn down. So kind of funny. And they're coming through here pretty quickly and fixing this up. And that's because we have 2 disaster response units through here. We're making a good chunk of money now. And our population is relatively steady. I'm pretty impressed by that considering the number of buildings that we have that are in a rough place right now. Now, the one thing that after you're going through these disasters, you need to keep an eye on is your health and your death care in particular, because that will be negatively impacted. We've had lots of people die as we come through here. We lost 349 people. That is a death care spike. And if you don't have sufficient death care, you're going to struggle with that. Now, we lost our cemetery here. We can rebuild that. We could also delete it now if we wanted to. We're going to rebuild it because we need the death care, but just something to be aware of. Now here, this sinkhole, there's not a lot we can do about that besides to fill it back in and then rebuild our park. There we go. Good is new in this area. Could use some trees, but that's okay. And now we'll pop right back in here and take a look. Are there places where we have destruction that we can fix? Anything that's blue, that's a growable. We don't need to worry about these. We can't do anything about them besides demolish them. We could certainly go ahead and do that. We're not gonna lose any citizens. If I were to demolish any of these that are red and have that destruction icon, I could lose citizen lives. So we don't want to do that. And all that doing this, so I'm going through and I'm deleting some of these demolished buildings that have been searched. What that's going to do is ensure that they rebuild quicker. It'll raise the land values around it. Now, this red one right here is something I have to rebuild. If I don't click rebuild, it will not rebuild. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to manually rebuild those ones. And then we have some paths that are destroyed. Interestingly, those aren't showing up as something I need to do. So I guess just keep that in mind. We're going to need to go through. It's the same as the roads. Go to the upgrade tool, and now I can just upgrade those. So for the most part in this area, we've recovered. And downtown, I think we've got the university to worry about. We can just come through here and rebuild all of those. Now, this is going to be a quite costly endeavor. $1,000 a building is what we're looking at. A little more than. That one's $5,300, $4,000, $5,000. So you need to have money or you're going to need a loan. So just keep that in mind. And it negatively impacts your property values to have those destroyed buildings. So very important that you do this. Now, do we have our tsunami? I don't see it yet. I'm curious why this is taking so long. And it looks like there's a slight tsunami. You see it right there? The water's just a little bit higher and it's coming up. I think the long and short here is likely that our city, first of all, you won't receive the notification unless your buoys actually get hit. So that's one part of it. You see that there's a slight line. It's a 5, so it's not huge. But I'm curious. We've got a buoy right here. It should get hit. It's just not that significant of a tsunami. And you see it coming up the shore. We've situated our buildings far enough back that they shouldn't be deeply impacted. Maybe these ones right here, a couple. But this city's actually, well, there it is. Went off, tsunami, 5. And there you go. You see that we've actually placed our buildings far enough back from the water and high enough up. I mean, this is 20 meters up here from the coast. This could be impacted, but most likely this wouldn't be unless you have a very significant tsunami. And you can see we have some flooding up here. And this is where some of these other buildings that came with this disaster pack come in. So we have the pumping service, can be very helpful. With this, we've got one over here. Not great, not terrible. They'll need to drive down the highway to get over here. Some of this will evaporate off as well, so it might evaporate off or run off before this is a problem. I'll speed this up. We can just see water came in a bit over here, but truthfully, not that bad. Oh, right here, not so good. So with this, I think you're seeing that there are multiple ways that you can play disasters. So some people will take disasters. They'll say, I'm done with my city, and they'll destroy it. You could also just leave it on and deal with the small disasters as they come. Ensure that you have enough money in your bank to remedy any big disasters that come your way, and use it as, as kind of a tool to make the game have a bit more replay value. And I would encourage that. It's certainly a fun way to experience the game in a new way. And I should have evacuated here. I did not. So we probably lost some citizens. You can see the disaster response unit was quick here. Very quick. We're very close to the disaster response unit, which is helpful. And they're coming through here. And these buildings are already primed to be rebuilt. And then we have this jet ski rental here. That's my responsibility because it's a plopped building. So there we go. That solves most of our issues with this one. And I was just right mouse clicking, left mouse clicking with this shift terrain tool to raise and lower this to get this at the right height. So that can be helpful, particularly when you don't have a key wall, as long as it's close enough to the shore. So there we go. And you still see that we are still suffering from the tsunami, and basically the waves are going in and then they're coming out. So we have a secondary flood. I didn't see that coming. It just was happening. Let's take a look over here. Anything happening over? Oh, I think this is a second tsunami actually, because I set 2 off, not realizing that the first one was still coming. Now this one appears to be more severe in terms of what it's doing, in terms of the location. So even though the severity of both was 5, one hit at a better spot for us. This one's worse, and I'm wondering if it's going to impact the overcharged egg experience or not. Let's speed it up and see what happens. And again, it kind of hit the same areas. We got over here, we got here. These are areas where you might decide, I don't want to deal with the flooding anymore, and maybe you want to actually build some flood walls or something like that in place. You know, that is happening in the world right now, where there are places that we just know it's prone to flooding. We want to build a flood wall to keep the waters out. And look what this does. It eclipses it a little bit, but it doesn't allow the water's not getting nearly as far. It's stopping changes the velocity of the hit. So this is certainly something that you could do. There are cities that are doing this. They're building. Another thing you could do is you could decide, I'm going to build some sort of break here with land, and you could buy soil and build a break, and that would protect your city as well. So all things to think about, whether you go with the flood walls or you build a break and then you put a flood wall on it. Lots of things you could do. But these are the sorts of decisions that this DLC forces you to make that you wouldn't have to make without it. So I will get rid of that. We're fine. We're deciding to go for aesthetics over function in that particular instance. Here we go, rebuilding, only to have the water come back. So it's really this one area that's not great. So we would probably want to think about ways to strengthen the resiliency of this area. Look at that. We've got a fire at the zoo. So lots of stuff to think about. And this is with fire spreading. Now I could, if I were really distraught, I could come in here and say, I really don't want the fires to spread anymore. I'm turning off disasters and I'm disabling fire spreading. Now watch what this fire does. It's going to stop going anywhere and it'll pretty much extinguish itself after just a couple of minutes. No more trees, no more buildings. Just what you see is gonna start on fire. So right here, for instance, this building will not start on fire, nor will the helicopter. So this will give our helicopters the ability to hopefully put this out. Not before we lose our monkey palace, though. So we gave it a go. One of the things about our zoo and the overcharged egg experience is that basically this is a bit of a struggle because there are no roads accessing this. So you're 100% reliant on air coverage. So the buildings that could be protected with a fire truck are really the things on the outside that are facing roads. So it's 1, 2, 3, not much. Same thing here. And you see that the stuff along the roads, it's fine. It's all the stuff on the inside that failed. And of course, now the tsunami's coming. And if it could have just come a little bit sooner, maybe it could have put that fire out. But it didn't. And now we're suffering. So the other thing to keep in mind is I've had this on 3 the entire time in terms of the speed that I'm simulating this. The water mechanics are different depending on the level that you are simulating at. So because I'm going very quickly, the mechanics are going to be a little bit more crude than they would be if I ran it slower. So you might see a bit more destruction. So just keep that in mind. That's something that I found out actually building dams with some of your guys' help in the comments, that you actually end up with a worse simulation experience if you're running on fast speeds, more destruction, and just something to keep in mind. That said, I want this to clean up. I want these disasters out of here so we can rebuild the last little bit of our community, because I think that we've done a good job of surviving the disasters. So let's let our disaster response units do their job, and then we will get everything rebuilt. You can see the tsunami actually impacted back here even. So the impacts were wide-reaching. I want to see this, because this is probably our most significant problem now. In terms of flood walls, this would, after this tsunami, I would certainly consider adding a flood wall right here, or even along here, getting rid of some of these homes. This is going to have to evaporate off. There's no way the pumping stations will be able to handle this, and it's going to just pool. You can see where it's going to pool. Look at your terrain heights. So it's going to go in this little basin here, and it's going to sit down here in the highway until it runs off. So you're going to get these pumping trucks. Oh no, they're going to go underwater. Maybe not. Maybe they're okay. But this is so much water, they're not going to be able to handle that. I mean, you just had half the bay wash in here. So we're going to be a little bit stuck. And look at it. It got so high up here. Oh, these burned down. So you can see what happened. It says burn down. Oh, whoops. So it's burning down. It burned down before. Now it's flooding a little bit. That's interesting. Why is it ponding there? Oh, look at that. It's a little dip right there. And this evaporated out pretty quickly. Wasn't too bad. And I think part of that is that we've had this on high, or the pumping station is much more effective than I believed it to be. One of the two. And you can see that from a traffic standpoint, the city is still just wrecked. And that's because people are finding different routes through the city as these disasters occur. They're relocating. We've also got interesting things like these power lines destroyed. Maybe they're not necessary, and this will demonstrate that, but I'm still going to add it there for resiliency's sake. One of the reasons why we didn't lose power in the city throughout all of this is we do have multiple places where things connect. Even where we have a narrow corridor like this, multiple places where buildings are connecting, and that's helpful. So there we go. Very good. Let's see, the tsunami warning is still in effect. they take a while to come and they take a while to go. So just something to keep in mind. These are continually rebuilding as the tsunami comes and destroys our city, recedes. Now over here, we're also able to rebuild most of our zoo and the egg experience. There we go. One last building. Nothing I can do to make this go faster either. So we're just going to have to wait. I'm going to peer around. It's interesting to me that none of this had issues. Now our disaster's done. Our report, 83 citizens lost, 42 buildings destroyed. So truthfully, not that bad. Just a long-term disruption. Lasted a bit longer. Now, if you have a strong tsunami, it will wipe out your city. So just something to keep in mind. Now let's go ahead. We'll take a look. Destruction. I think we're mostly resolved. Now you do need to keep low enough that you can see things, because if you zoom out too far, you won't see the destruction. So just keep that in mind. Our airport's functioning again. I'm curious. I saw that we're down to a level 2, which I find to be very curious. So it's the attractiveness score. Something happened to take down our attractiveness score. So let's look at this. And how far are we away? We're quite a ways away. I think I know what did this. So I believe that I had aircraft control over here, and that got destroyed. So that got us closer. May have also had some lounges over here. And these are each 60. That gets us to our level 3 by 8 points. We're really threading the needle there, but it works. So there we go. Looking good. Our airport's back to level 3. Population's still dropping. Part of that is likely death care. We're improving there, actually. Things are getting better. Our lifespan's not great. And if we pop into here and take a look, yeah, our birth rate and death rate aren't that far apart. I'd love to see the senior population have a longer lifespan. Part of the drop-off could be that people are dying because of disasters. Part of it is just we don't have enough elder care, so those would be things I would look at. Things are still happening here. Even though we are past our disaster, you still see that we have a bit of flooding. The ocean isn't totally calm yet. It's getting better, but it's not perfect. And then we have our last building here. I think with that, we are rebuilt. We are totally rebuilt. So I just want to look through here. Oh, we're not. There we go. Now we are rebuilt. One last once over. Nothing bad over here. Oh, more things. So even when you think you're done, you might not be. And look at this. We've got a problem with our routes. So isn't that curious? Oh, look at this. So it's not the routes, it's the road connections. They didn't restore in the right way. So I guess keep that in mind with these fishing harbors and even the algae farm, fish farm rather. All right, so it also didn't fix our routes here, so we'll need to go in. Let's take a look at what's happening there. Interesting. I do not know where this is broken, but I have a suspicion it's right here. And for whatever reason, it just, one part of this didn't reconnect. So keep that in mind, and hopefully you don't run into the same problem. So there we go. Our city is back in business. And the other thing that we could do is pop into our city statistics, and we can take a look at this. Now keep in mind that all of these things, the collapsed buildings, the road segments, they all lag a bit. So you're not going to see everything right away. You can see we had 1.58 disasters apparently. I don't know what that means, but things are looking up in this community. We didn't gain any population. In fact, we lost a bit. We lost a bit of population, but the city survived everything, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I want to outline where we're going to go from here with Tutoria. So we've looked at all the DLCs at this point. The next episode, I'm going to give you a new DLC review where I rank all the DLCs in terms of the order that I would purchase them if I had absolutely no DLCs right now. Then we're going to look at all the content creator packs. I will talk about what each of those brings into the game, and then I will rank those as well. Then after that, I'm going to go through some mods that I would bring into the game if you're playing on a PC and want to improve your gameplay. So with this, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Lots of interesting things happening today. And if you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you aren't subscribed, please consider doing so. And I will leave you with a brief city tour. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.